Hey everybody, this is Mr. Mazzoro, and today what I wanted to talk to you about are the layers of the ocean. It's going to be kind of a short lesson, but it's important because the ocean's really deep and it's divided into layers, and I'm going to be talking about those layers a lot and how they change, specifically how their temperature and salinity changes. And when we talk about how temperature and salinity changes, we're going to stumble onto this thing called the main thermocline. It's really important. It deals with how temperature changes in one particular layer of the ocean. And I have to talk to you a little bit about what that is and why the temperature does that there. So here we go. In order to talk about layering of the ocean, we have to look at salinity, temperature, and density with respect to depth. And in order to do that, we're going to use our old friend, the ocean profile. You might remember this graph from when I taught you about how oxygen changes with depth. But just as a little bit of refresher, on the y-axis of the ocean profile, you have the depth of water in reverse order. So as you move down the y-axis, you're actually getting deeper and deeper and deeper in water. On the x-axis, you can have anything. Here we have three things. We have salinity, temperature, and pressure. And as the points move further to the right of the x-axis, that means that those points are getting more salty or warmer or more dense. And as the points move further to the left, that means that they are getting less salty or colder or less dense. And if we look at the salinity and temperature and what they affect the density of water, what we notice is that we have three distinct layers of the ocean. And let's talk about what those three layers are. On the surface, or surface layer, you have water that's relatively less dense than the rest of the water below it. Less dense water is on top. Why? Well, two reasons. One is you have the warming effects of the sun, and warmer water is less dense, and as a result, it goes to the top of the ocean. You also, in some places, have rain or rivers running into the ocean, which causes water to be less salty. And both of those things together cause the surface layer to be less dense than the areas below it. Then we have this area in the middle. This is called the intermediate zone. It's not actually the middle of the ocean. It's actually closer towards the top. But here we have density rapidly increasing. And if you look over here, that's probably because temperature is rapidly decreasing. As we move deeper and deeper in water, we lose the warming effects of the sun. And as a result, when we lose those warming effects of the sun, the temperature drops. And as the temperature drops, the density of that area rises. This area where temperature changes a lot with respect to depth, that area is known as the main or permanent thermocline. Thermo means temperature. Cline is the suffix that means change in, so this is a change in temperature. And the main or permanent thermocline is exactly that. It's permanent. Regardless of what ocean you are in, or what season you are in, or where in the ocean you are, that area will always be there. It will always be in the intermediate zone. It's deep enough underwater that seasonality or geographic location in the ocean does not affect it. It's exactly what its name suggests. It's always there. It's permanent. That's always where temperature is going to drop down, and therefore density is going to rapidly increase. Because it's permanent, it always makes up what we establish as the intermediate layer of the ocean. So anything above that main or permanent thermocline becomes the surface, and anything below that main or permanent thermocline becomes the deep. Speaking of that, not a really big hoot and surprise, but deep water is relatively cold, relatively uniform salinity, and as a result, it's basically uniformly dense. So there you have it. Three basic layers of the ocean. The surface layer, the intermediate layer, and the deep layer. Surface layer is warmer, and in some places relatively less salty, so it's less dense. As we lose the warming effects of the sun, our temperature drops down drastically, which increases our density drastically. And that area where temperature drops down is the intermediate zone. And it's where you find the main or permanent thermocline. Regardless of where you are in the ocean or what ocean you are in, that area is always going to be there, where we lose the warming effects of the sun and temperature drops down. Below the intermediate layer, there's the deep layer. Deep layer makes up most of the ocean. It's uniformly salty and uniformly cold, which means it's uniformly dense, more dense than the areas above it. So that's it. again, kind of a short lesson, but that kind of goes through the different layers of the ocean and how temperature and salinity change the density in those layers.